Hey everybody, my name is Andrew Davis, and you are watching Conversations in Pop Culture, brought to you by my friends at Make Some Printing, the smarter way to print. Printing your creative projects can be confusing and stressful, but Make Some is here to make it easy. From their instant quote calculator that lets you get as many quotes as you want for free, to their 24-hour customer service, Make Some is here to make your printing experience run smoothly from start to finish. You can choose from a range of premium printing options and materials, and the company has also printed many successful Kickstarter campaigns. A bunch of people you have heard of on my show, and they are a phenomenal company, and they offer services in the United States, Canada, Australia, and the UK, and Make Some can print and reach your audience around the world. So if you're ready to print smarter, not harder, head over to mixsome.com, and listeners of my show right now can actually drop my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab to get a 5% discount on their first order. And when you're printing on Kickstarter, guys, I know that 5% makes a huge difference because every dollar counts, or for anything you're printing, 5% is a big discount when you're counting your pennies. I know because I'm there. So that is mixam.com. Type my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab, and you can get 5% off your first order. And so I have with me returning guest, Logan Black. So welcome to the show, man.
Yes, how's it going, dude? Great to be back, always.
Yeah, no, I am super excited because we spoke in January of this year, I think, and I'm really bad now because every day seems like it's the same, and a lot's come about in wrestling for you, and I think the big thing that sort of dropped is that you sort of came out in the wrestling world a little bit.
Yeah, I did.
And I'm hesitating because I think it's a pretty open story, but
yeah, no, go listen. I'm as I always say to everybody, I'm an open book. If I'm on your show, I'm here to be open to whatever it is that you're asking, because that's how we all learn, that's how we all grow, and that's what I like to do. So lay it on me.
And so I think a bunch of people who are close to you knew, but what prompted all this? Because it sort of just happened, and it's a very interesting thing that happened. And then I'm just reading, I'm like, oh wow, this is interesting, and it's sort of an everyday thing for me because I know you're a decent guy. And how did all this come about?
So I'm going to assume that you're talking about my very public coming out.
Yes, that's what I'm referring to.
Sure, no, got to make sure of things. So, honestly, there really is no crazy story or anything, wild or insane behind it. It was literally, a Twitter thread of somebody just asking, who in professional wrestling is LGBTQ. Those close to me knew. I was pretty open about it, and I wasn't, but I think that the general public did not know. And it was like, you know what? Maybe it's time for me to finally, actually do that and just kind of, live my truth out in the open in front of everybody instead of kind of just having it be a thing between myself and those close to me. It's like, yeah, why not? Because, I think, and it's something that I still struggle with at this point, even after coming out. Let me adjust myself so that I don't look so slouchy, even though I'm not slouching. No, I think it's something I struggle with even now, of just never feeling queer enough for the community, even though that's not the case, even though it's my own insecurity. But I feel like if there's one person out there who's, ultra masculine and, covered in, it's just someone who is kind of me and doesn't, I guess, fit the mold of what, a lot of people have preconceived in their heads, that somebody who is, pansexual would look like. Well, damn, okay, they see themselves in me, and maybe that makes them feel comfortable. And, that was part of my thought process. And immediately I was, all the love and everything from everybody, but I'd say at least 4 or 5 friends of mine immediately texted me hey, I've been feeling the same way. I don't know how to come out about it, but, when I decide to do it, I'm going to. And thank you for being, outright about it. And all of those people have since come out, which is really awesome and really dope. And again, I'm not going to sit there and go, well, I was the reason, because I wasn't. They found their time and all that. But even again, just to give 1 ounce of, or rather 1 brick in the road of being able to do that for a lot of people, I think is really cool. It feels really good for me.
And to even go further into this, because it's very interesting, because obviously I know Ariella Nix was very supportive, because obviously, you know, she's been very supportive of you. And I know a lot of people, and what has that been like? Because it is a very scary thing when you come out in this entire community, and that you've been greeted with a lot of love and a lot of people saying, oh man, you know, I'm with you, I'm behind you. And there's been a lot of people who have been in your corner. You know, I think Darnell Mitchell, if I got the name right, was also one of the people that was very supportive.
Oh yeah, Darnell was a person. I think that's what kind of was one of the things that really prompted me to be like, all right, let me get over myself and just do this, because you know, last year before I came out, he wished me happy Pride, and it brought all. It was because Darnell knew, and him and I had talked about it, and it was just, you know, feeling like I belonged in the community. Like I said before, like it was something that I didn't feel like I belonged. And getting just that sense of that really meant a ton to me. So that was super important to feel. And, you know, like I said, you know, Darnell and tons of other people have just, it's been nothing but support the whole way through. And, you know, I'm very grateful, and, you know, I recognize how privileged I am to have that.
And obviously, I'm super stoked about it, because obviously I believe everybody should live the way they want to live, and that they shouldn't live in fear, because, you know, we only get one shot at life. Unless you believe in reincarnation, and then you might have multiple shots at life, but that's not the point. And so I'm super stoked about it. And obviously, you know, you're happy and you're a decent guy. And so it's amazing. And also, you really got to experience, I think, Pride for the first time this year out in the open as well, which is a very cool thing in a lot of ways. And so what was that like for you? Because it's sort of your first open Pride, and it could be a very emotional thing in a lot of ways, and it could also be a very relieving thing.
Sure. So, you know, outside of, you know, my persona and who I am at shows and, you know, when the camera's on, for the most part, I'm pretty quiet, and, you know, I kind of keep to myself. Y'all can see behind me, there's a buttload of books and comic books and stuff. I really do keep to myself, and I kind of just keep chill. So I don't think necessarily like going to a parade is for me, not because I don't support it or anything. Of course, I think it's awesome. Always love to see that, and I love my friends going. I'm just not a parade person, because I'm just large crowds. I'm just like, all right, this is way too much energy sometimes. I got to chill a bit. So Pride for me, experiencing it this year, was way more just like, I guess, understanding the history of everything that's gone on, and, you know, everything that kind of goes into that, and being able to like consume media in such a way that, you know, is more Pride centric. Again, because, you know, pop anime comics, we're gonna, you know, I'm a big fucking comic guy, and the whole thing here is during Pride Month, I went out and was like, you know what, let me look through these very LGBTQ centric comics that are not specific to, like, not flat out, like, I don't know, like America Chavez is a queer character in Marvel. I collect all of her stuff, or not necessarily stuff like that, but things that were like written in such a way that it was a completely different take on things, and like boom. So like I've got over there, I bought the trade paperback of Rawhide Kid that was written in the 2000s, where they made Rawhide Kid gay and kind of gave us a Western with a gay lead, which is something that doesn't get done. I've got it upstairs in the living room. I think it's the most brilliant thing that I've read in a long time. And you're going to laugh when I say this, because everybody has. But Exit Stage left the Snagglepuss Chronicles. Yes, the Snagglepuss from Hanna-Barbera. They took Snagglepuss and made him a gay playwright during McCarthyism. It is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I cannot recommend that book enough.
Have you read Stuck Rubber Baby by any chance?
Have I read, what was that?
Stuck Rubber Baby.
I cannot say that I have.
So Stuck Rubber Baby is by Howard Cruz, who was one of the lead gay comics writers in the underground days, and was one of the people who was fighting for gay comics to become more and more mainstream. And Howard is no longer with us, a big advocate, and he was writing about, you know, marches and being down in Alabama and having a, you know, kid with a woman coming into being a gay young man. and dealing with civil rights issues. And it's an amazing thing because it's all about acceptance on a multiple of levels, and it's an amazing book.
That's something I'm gonna have to end up reading, because, like I said, these stories that are just so. At this point, I guess being out and open, it's a different twist for me, because I can put myself in that position. Like everybody, why do we read media, or just media in general? Why do we consume media in general? Because we can see ourselves in the characters, and that's the thing. Why is Spider-Man so popular? Because everybody can see themselves as Spider-Man. He's not super big. He's not, the best fighter. He fails all the time. It's a relatable story. It's, I can understand that. And I guess a lot of other people can too, because Spider-Man has like a new comic out every week. What about these books now? Again, being out and open and just looking at this, there's always something that I'm able to draw from. And I think that that's really awesome. And I could really appreciate that as being something that's just totally new. Like if I had read these books 5-10 years ago, man, like it would not have hit me the same way, or it would have hit me completely different because I was still in the closet.
Yeah, no, and I think it's fascinating because obviously, I'm straight and I view things, but I've done a lot of research into gay comics, and obviously I've interviewed a lot of people like Howard Cruz and Trina Robbins and a few other people who have been very prominent in this. And so when you're going down that research path, obviously I'm looking at it in one way, and I can't look at it from your perspective per se. But, when you're speaking to these people and they're telling their stories, it's so interesting when you're getting, primary sources. And it gives me a little bit of insight into everything that's going on. And when you're speaking to the guy who wrote Stuck Rubber Baby and illustrated it, and then you actually go read it, it changes the way you do it. And it's so interesting. And I find this to be fascinating with you. And the fact that you're living the life you want to live is wonderful. And I'm super excited for what you do next. But obviously, I want to talk about wrestling because that's what we're here to do.
We're talking about wrestling as well. Let's go for it.
And so, obviously, we're not going to rehash everything we did in January. I know it's a hard pivot. And you can pivot back anytime you want to pivot back. So, obviously, you and with Chris Benet have been slaying it as the Apostles of Chaos. And obviously, the match I want to talk about, because I just had Rip Bison on, and I had Perry Von Vicious on, is that match, because Perry Von Vicious and Rip tend to push around opponents, and they can't push you and Chris around too easily.
No, that ain't gonna happen.
And he gave a little insight into that match where apparently I think the entire season of Limitless was filmed in like 2 or 3 days, back to back. And whether we're supposed to say that or not, I don't know. But it's the idea that and I think, Rip and Perry had a few matches before that. I think you had a few matches, and then this match took place. So what was this match like? Because it's an insane match.
Well, I mean, simply put, we beat the piss out of each other, and that's usually how it goes whenever I'm in there with either of those guys. I think it's an important, it's an important thing to kind of put together that, obviously you're going to be more comfortable with people that you know well and that you trust. But, there's that thing where you just know that you're able to like make some really entertaining stuff with people that you're cool with, because, there really are no limits. And then that's, I think, the great thing about art in general is that art, when it has no limits, it truly is just absolutely incredible. And in a collaborative thing like wrestling, I think once you get people together who don't really have, a glass ceiling or any type of limits, man, you can just kind of go crazy. I couldn't imagine what, the four of us would be able to do on like a show with a bigger crowd, or like, a show that encourages some, or a show that isn't like marketed towards wrestling fans. You know what I mean? Like there are a lot of promotions out right now that don't market towards wrestling fans. IWW, the promotion that I help, do everything with, is a promotion like that. We don't market towards wrestling fans. So what happens there? Well, now you can just kind of go crazy because these people don't know what to expect. They don't have anything to expect. They just want to have a good time. And watching people beat the piss out of each other, that's a good time for them.
And so what is that like? Because obviously I don't think it's been a while since I've gone to anything that has not been marketed to a wrestling fan. And obviously, at some point, I was not a wrestling fan, and I remember my first few shows were phenomenal. And then I guess I became sort of ruined when you start knowing, the wrestlers and you start knowing stuff. And what is that like coming into, I guess, fresh blood and fresh,
I think for me, one of the coolest things about it is, in fact, give me one moment as I'm right now, live interviews, guys. But I'm going to show you guys. I got my cat over here who is deciding that she needs attention. And because of that, she's going to sit on my comic long boxes. And that's a no-no. That's what puts me into wrestler mode with a tiny furry creature. So we're going to take Miss Selfie over here, who knows she is doing this for attention, and we're going to bring her over here so she could join us and get the attention she wants. Because, as you know, the best way to handle unruly children or pets is to give them what they want. So back to the question at hand. We marketing towards non-wrestling fans. So like Effie is a big proponent of this. If you break all of it down, wrestling fans represent a very small bubble of like the entertainment paying customer. The entertainment paying customer, music, live music and movies or theater, and all of that stuff. Literally any dollar that can be spent on entertainment. Think about that. People who are wrestling fans and go to wrestling events always, they are within this little bubble. And the bubble is tiny, and it's continued to shrink. I have a lot of theories as to why it has continued to shrink, but the truth is it's continued to shrink. Yeah, WWE is recording record profits, but in general, the fan base of pro wrestling is much smaller than it has ever been. Those people are just spending more money, which is cool. But again, you want as many people there as possible. And to me, you want to take people who are outside of that bubble, who may have never seen wrestling, who may have had no interest in wrestling, all that stuff. You want to take them and bring them to what we're doing. Maybe not bring them into the bubble because that bubble is a bit ridiculous at times, but just be like, hey, you can enjoy this too. You like Vin Diesel, jumping out of cars, that shit, that's ridiculous to you. Cool, wrestling is pretty ridiculous too. Check this out. Let me know what you think. So that's, I think, what a lot of our shows that we're promoting at this point are really based around. Diverse rosters, which obviously means, diverse people on there. A lot of representation of different ethnic groups, different, people of different genders and sexualities. Bringing all that together so that everybody who shows up can feel represented and, kind of see themselves in what's going on. Diversity also in, the talent we have. So, like, if you've got me on there, you're probably not going to find someone else who looks like me on there or, get interesting gimmicks because, man, something might be too ridiculous to go on AEW or WWE, but, wrestling in itself is ridiculous. We all are huge fans of an undead zombie who had a WrestleMania streak. Literally, he rose from the dead. He conjured fire and lightning at his last WrestleMania match. Like, let's be real here. Wrestling's a bit ridiculous. So why can we not have somebody on our show like Ron Voyage who shows up to do a conga line? Why not? Everybody there has a blast and everybody leaves being happy and going, I want to come back to this. That's all it comes down to.
So do you think that that's sort of the future of wrestling? Because I'm very, very, I'm a big Camp Leapfrog fan for the reason that it's not wrestling to me. It's more of a suspended universe that is in its own thing. Obviously, there's campers, there's counselors, and everybody there is sort of doing camp-related activities. And to me, it's partially wrestling, but once I suspend disbelief, I'm all the way in. I'm bought in, essentially. And so it's like a weird thing for me because it's almost like a self-contained world. And then when I'm watching it, and they're doing cinematic stuff, it makes sense to me. I don't know how to describe it, but I think that's very much the future of wrestling. And I don't think that shows, and there's nothing wrong with deathmatch wrestling, but it doesn't entertain me as much as something like Camp Leapfrog does.
No, absolutely. I think a lot of people are turned off by the idea of pro wrestling. Why? Because it has always been presented in such a way that is not inclusive. And that doesn't necessarily mean to because wrestling is definitely guilty of having some raging homophobia and a lot of racism and stuff like that. But I think it's not inclusive to like people who just don't get it. And that's the thing. I don't think you have to get it to still be entertained by it. You can watch a Fast and Furious movie and know that Vin Diesel would never survive jumping out of that car, falling 500 feet, and then landing on the top of a truck. You know that's not going to be the case. But it doesn't not make it cool. In the same way that somebody dumping me on my head, it's like, I know that that's not, legitimate. I know that that's not real, but it's entertaining and it's fun and people can enjoy themselves doing all of those things. I think drawing people into that is definitely the future of wrestling. I know for a fact that major company, WWE, I won't say major company, but WWE does not market towards wrestling fans because wrestling fans in that bubble will always show up to wrestling shows. Always, no matter what. They're going to be showing up. They're going to go. They're going to complain. They're going to get on the internet and be loud about it. But they're always going to show up. They're never going to turn away because they're in the bubble. Why market towards them? You already have their money. Market towards the people whose money you don't have. People who normally would not spend it on your show. Bad Bunny went in, did a WrestleMania match, and sold the most merch of anybody on that show. Are you telling me it was only wrestling fans that blew that money? Absolutely not. It was mostly non-wrestling fans. And you make bank off of that. It's brilliant marketing. If you do that as an independent company, you could really have a ton of fun with that and not work within the confines and I guess the little section, the bubble of wrestling that WWE has to. You can kind of do whatever the hell you want. You can create, Kaiju Big Battle creates monsters that go into a ring and kind of wrestle. Those aren't wrestling fans. Those are people just showing up for a good time.
Yeah, and Kaiju Big Monster Battle stuff is so much fun to watch.
Right, yeah.
I can, because this is how I feel about Camp Leapfrog. I legitimately can pour myself some whiskey, and I could sit and chill out and do nothing, and I don't have to think about anything. Or as Chris said on my show a year and a half ago, he said it's kind of the thing where you could roll a joint, and you don't have to worry too much about what's going on. You can just take a nice bunch of, puffs and relax and unwind at 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night. And you don't have to worry too much about it because it's easy to digest. And that's something where I'm having a hard time as a wrestling fan with certain companies because they're not digestible to me. Like, nothing against ICW, No Holds Bar, and I love deathmatch wrestling, but sometimes it's not so digestible as in like a Camp Leapfrog or even a Kaiju, Big Battle, and the monster stuff is so digestible. It's so easy for me just to sort of throw it on in the background, if that makes any sense.
Right. No, I was going to say, it's funny you mentioned that at our IWW shows there, we have one character, Dro Doobie. He's your resident affable stoner, and he comes out and he did Triple H's entrance, but with 2 joints, and the crowd was smoking with him. It's a vibe, you know what I mean? And I think that we need to also understand, that, shows are about vibes. And if people are having good times, they're going to want to keep spending their money. So, that's something that we want people to want to come to. And I'm saying this as somebody who is, straight edge. So, like, when I can sit there and go, yeah, people are having a good time and that's dope, regardless of what it is, that it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big weed fan. For those who are interested, I'm more of like to pour myself, a nice little whiskey, or I like to just have a beer, and but it's the idea that I know that a bunch of people find certain things to be social, and that's what they want to do, and it's more power to them, because I've been at wrestling shows, and you've been wrestling where the crowd is into it. It's Butch vs. Core was a really good example of that, where the crowd was really into it. It was probably one of when prime time. I know it's a dirty word, guys. I know it's a dirty word. We're all adults in the room here. That was one of their best shows. And it's very, very important to understand that it was just a great vibe, and everybody wanted to be there. Really inclusive show, as well, just from a fan base. So super, super interesting. But I do want to talk about it. So this is a few more things. Obviously, we can talk about Blitzkrieg, and that was cool because I have a connection to that. And I was sort of sponsoring that match at Blitzkrieg. I think, what was it, like last June, I want to say?
Okay, I think I do remember that one.
And that was like, I think, what was that? Kip Stevens and Juba, or was it? Because I don't even remember anymore. This
We
is really
wrestled
good. I'm
Kip
the
and
interviewer.
Juba, and then we with Hermit Crab wrestled Kip, Juba, and Devontae's. So it might have been.
I think it was just it was. I think it was Kip
Yeah, I think
Stevens.
you're right.
And it was a fun match, and that was my first time watching Blitzkrieg. And so obviously, I just want to mention that I was sponsoring you guys, so I get brownie points. That's all I want to say.
Oh, obviously we appreciate that very much.
And then it's Blitzkrieg is a very cool promotion in a lot of ways, and I like some of the stuff they do, and obviously they really bring in some decent talent lately.
Oh yeah, those shows are always fantastic.
And so that's something that I wanted to mention. And then also I want to talk about what you've done in Limitless briefly before we get to the more fun stuff as well. And you've had some crazy battles with Kennedy Copeland and I think Bill Avery. You've had some wars with Delmy Exo and Rick Bison. And there's just been a bunch of those. And so what have those wars been like? Because that Rick Bison and Delmy match was insane.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all comes down to the stuff that we were talking about before about Rip and Perry, where it's just when you walk in there and you've got people that you know that you can make really great art with, it becomes really easy to just do that. You go out and you have a blast, and there's no worries or cares or any of that stuff. You're just going out there to enjoy yourself and make some really awesome art. And I could really appreciate the fact that Randy and Limitless Wrestling are kind of just a very hands-off place where they're like, make art your way, and we will broadcast it.
And then the other thing that I love that you've done, and I think we got to hand it to Kennedy, is that she has stepped up tremendously to a plate. And whether she'll admit it, whether you'll take credit, the match you had with her when we spoke about it, I think maybe you had the match like a week after I interviewed, or maybe it was the week before. But I mean, it was the idea that I think that you made her in a lot of ways, and that was sort of her turning point in her career. And whether you want to admit it or not, in a lot of ways, witnessing it, and especially witnessing it live, what was that like? Because that was the idea that it was almost like you were molding her in clay, for lack of a better word.
Well, here's the thing. I won't take too much credit in a lot of ways. I'll say that I definitely was able to bring something out of her that you're seeing a lot more of now. But it was always there. Kennedy is stupid talented, always has been, and I've told her this since I met her. She just now is starting to gain the confidence to really let that go, and that's great. Happy to have played a role in that, and I think I've always just wanted to be. So I put it out there always. My idol is Terry Funk. Always been my favorite wrestler of all time. And Terry was always a guy that no matter what locker room he went into, he was like, I want to make that person. I want to make that person. That's how I look at everything. Put me in there with whoever, and I'm going to get the best out of them. So that's that's pretty much how it was with Kennedy. I'd love to see the trajectory your career is taken.
Because one of the things that I appreciate about you, and I think people need to know it, is that you take the mentality that you come into wrestling, and wherever you're at, whatever locker room you're in, you want to enter that place and you want to leave it better than it was.
Right, always.
It is that you take a lot of pride. It's worn very much on your shoulder in that. And so that's a very interesting mentality. And I don't mean to disparage certain people, but I've run into a bunch of people, and I'm not in the business the same way you are, but just in the interview world. And I've been doing this for about 8 years, probably interviewed at least 100 wrestlers. There are some who don't have that joy and don't have that idea and are very much in it for themselves. And so what prompted you to want to make it a better place and leave it in a better place than when you entered it, because it's something that not every wrestler has.
So I think I kind of that's my life motto, is just leave things better than you found it. No matter what I'm doing, I want to leave that better than when I found it. And wrestling is something that I love so much, and I'm so passionate about that. For me, to go out there and not do that, not leave it better than it was, to me, kind of it doesn't feel right. I need to be able to put all of my effort and all of my love and all of my hard work into making wrestling a better place. Again, it's why IWW is run the way that it is. It's why T2T continues to be a place for a lot of people from like groups that normally are not given a fair shake in wrestling to get a fair shake and get a really good education in wrestling and work hard, put that effort in, and the culture we've created there. So for me, it's super important to make all of that work because it's literally how I live my life. And one of the things that I was, talking to somebody about it today, one of the lessons that I've learned is like, you can go into like an industry of trash that is wrestling. I love wrestling, but there's a lot of trash involved in wrestling. And you might not be able to pick up all the trash in wrestling. So you might just walk into a place and no matter what, that place is going to be full of litter. However, if the next person that walks in and throws a bottle on the floor, if you go, hey, let's not do that because that's not cool. And they go, all right. And they tell the next person, hey, you don't do that. Well, what happens? You might be full of trash, but eventually that trash is going to decompose and get out of there. And everybody else is going to work to make it better. At T2T, it's something that I preach because I say within these four walls, we have this culture. And when you go to other shows, we bring that elsewhere. And that's how we fix things. Because if all you need is one person to say no, or one person to say, let's do it differently. And somebody else goes, yeah, you know what? I was thinking that. I appreciate you saying that. Let's do that. And again, it becomes contagious. That's how we make change.
Yeah, and I have nothing to disagree about where it only takes a little bit, and it even doesn't take a hell of a lot. If you just say, hey, let's try to do this a little bit differently, or we just don't, throw something, or that we speak a certain way versus another way, and enough people start engaging, obviously that's how things go. And also, change doesn't have to happen overnight. Change can happen slowly, right. And it's all right if something takes a little bit of time to change.
Right. I might not be able to make change immediately for anybody and all that kind of stuff, but I'm going to put a whole school's worth of kids out there on the indies who are going to treat things differently, not stand for nonsense, and just generally be good people. And that'll be contagious.
And so obviously we're going to talk about, I think, like three more things. And
sure.
I do want to talk about uncanny attractions, dropkick depressions, because obviously that's an awesome promotion to be in.
Yeah.
And so what is it like getting to work there? Because obviously a lot of cool people are involved in that. I know MB Young, I think, is involved in that. I was in Pittsburgh this weekend and he wouldn't buy me food. I was very upset when I tweeted. I'm not happy with him. He did not make me.
I can't speak for him. I think he's got a whole lot that he's worrying about right now.
He did offer me, though, if we were at a barbecue, that he would bring beer, so it's all right.
I mean, at least you got that going for you. I was gonna say, Uncanny was a blast to work for. Hoping that they start running again once things start to die down. I know that they had said we were gonna wait until the pandemic has died down to run, but now with people not willing to get vaccinated and people kind of being terrible about things, it's like, well, who knows when that'll be. But I'm excited to work for them at some point again, because just it's being surrounded by good people is always a good thing. And same thing with Dropkick Depression. I know they've got a show upcoming in a month or so, and I'm just looking forward to being around those people. Tara Calloway, when I talk about wanting to make wrestling better, she's someone who inspired me. Tara spearheaded a program with the non-for-profit RAIN, which deals with rape and sexual abuse, and all to get wrestling, all to get seminars for wrestling and promotions and trainers to be able to educate themselves and educate others on what is sexual assault, what is sexual abuse, which is something that we really do need in the age of speaking out. We really do need to really put that out there and detail it so that we can go, okay, here's what this is. You violated this. What are the consequences now? It's an important thing to do, and she spearheaded that because she is a boss. Tara is such an inspiration to me. I can't speak high enough, and to be able to be on that roster is always just such a trip, and it's so awesome for me.
And some of those matches are just phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, matches are like, secondary to how awesome everything is, but those matches are great. Like, it's ridiculous the amount of like first-time matches they've had over there that are just like, why did nobody think this up in the first place?
And it's also just the vibe as well. And whether you're watching it in your house or even you're there, it's a very cool vibe, and it's just something that's like, I would love to go to a show eventually where they're at, but right now with the pandemic, and obviously I have a medical issue that I don't want to put myself out there and risk myself. Sure. But that's just me personally, and I'm happy to watch something streaming or on demand. We live in an age where I watch a lot of wrestling, where 10 years ago this wouldn't even be possible. And so it's something that's very cool in that regard. But I do want to talk about something that's actually super cool, and talking about marketing to non-wrestling fans. You were at Kineticon, I think.
I was.
And they didn't want to book my panel about comic book investing. Shame on them. I would have made everybody richer in the entire...
You know what? Again, I don't know anything, but I can tell you why. It was not a comic book convention. It was an anime convention, because I went there looking to blow a paycheck on comic books and literally only found one table that had comic books on it, literally in the entire convention.
Fair enough. I'll keep that in mind. And I don't know when I'm going back to a con, but that's not the point. It's fair enough. They probably should have done a little more research. With a name like Pop Anime Comics, you think they would ask.
Of course.
But, go figure that one out. But you can't speak for them. But they did have something very cool that was done at another place, that another anime con I was at, and it's cosplay wrestling.
Yes.
And so, or cosplay championship wrestling. And so, what was like the story, how you got invited into this, and how did this come about? Because this is just fun.
Yeah, no, it was, so this is, again, just the way that wrestling always works, in that, like, you make connections, you make friends, and then things just turn out. And I knew the promoter, Xander Litt, from shows years ago, and he knew that I was a comic fan because I post about this stuff all over social media. And he's like, hey, I'm doing this cosplay thing. I want you to be part of it. Give me a character that you'd like to dress up as. And we threw a bunch of ideas at each other. I had never done cosplay in my life. Hard to believe, right? So I've never done it, so I didn't know necessarily what to do. But I settled on Dakin for like a number of reasons. Both between myself and the character being pansexual. Dakin being the son of Wolverine, me being Logan Black. There's a lot going on, and Dakin just an awesome character. But that was last year, and Kineticon was canceled due to COVID. They brought it back this year with a lot of restrictions, and honestly, it was one of the most fun experiences I've ever had in my life. Just really awesome. Again, great vibes. And again, speaking about, marketing to non-wrestling fans, in order to get all this done, we had to do like a full day's worth of wrestling-related things in that space that we were given. So that, it was like, it wasn't just like, oh, we're doing 2 shows and, doing what we're doing. There was like wrestling trivia. And only like 5 people showed up to like wrestling trivia or like some of the other things we had listed. It wasn't very many people. But when it came time for the wrestling, everyone was there. Everybody in the con was either in a seat or around the ring watching. And what does that tell you? Is that there were 5 wrestling fans there among all the other anime and comic book fans. But there were lots of people who just wanted to be entertained by something fun. The importance of marketing to non-wrestling fans. And now a bunch of those people follow me on social media. They might not care about wrestling, but they might, think what I do is pretty cool because I'm another comic nerd doing something. So boom, these are people that might, buy a shirt. These are people that might come see me at a show. The importance of marketing towards non-wrestling fans. Cannot overstate it.
And I'm super curious because obviously I haven't been to a con in 20 months. I don't know when I'm coming back. There's a lot of reasons, partially economic. I'm still looking at my wounds from a very bad experience at a con down in D.C. And, obviously I'm I know there's like 3 or 4 cons in Connecticut where I'm at, and that's where I live. And, obviously there's a few more reasons. Physically, I'm just not in the best shape to go at the moment, for full disclosure. But what was it like at the con? Because I'm super curious, because I hear mixed reactions from a lot of people from a bunch of different angles. A bunch of my comic fans and friends are, from a marketing standpoint and a book selling point, they have a different view than people who are going as fans. And obviously, you were just there as wrestling and doing something cool in that regard. So I'm super curious what it was like.
So I made sure to spend my time that when I wasn't wrestling kind of going around the con and seeing what else was going on there and kind of taking it all in. And, I'll admit I'm not an anime person at all. I've never really, it's never been for me. I think the fandom is awesome. I love how passionate anime fans are. It just never caught on for me. So this being mostly an anime con and seeing like all the anime related stuff there, it's like, okay, I could skip over this for me. But what they did have in the same room that we were doing, because big giant convention room, what they did have in that same room as us, we were doing the wrestling, was just a plethora of video games. So there were maybe, I'd say, 24 arcade cabinets, sit-down arcade cabinets of popular games. So like I played and I beat Final Fight. Me and Scotty Wild. I don't know if you are aware of Scotty Wild. Hell of a talent from the Western Mass area. Me and him sat down and we beat Final Fight, which was dope. They had Arrow Fighters in there. They had a bunch of Japanese games that had been brought over to the States because they were translated. Of just like games I didn't know, but popular games because people were playing them all weekend. Then they had a giant setup for Rock Band or Guitar Hero, whatever, so people could just play that. They had a giant setup for fighting game tournaments. There were maybe 50 or so console games, so maybe 10 N64 set up with different games, 10 Sega Genesis, 10 Nintendo, so all these different things set up with console games. And then, which I thought was the coolest thing, and was all these Japanese import machines that were, literally games that you cannot find in the States. They imported these from Japan. These rhythm games, all in Japanese. These dance games, all in Japanese. Not just, they had, a DDR cabinet there, but one where it was I don't know if you remember the Wii dance games, or the motion capture ones with the camera. One like that where people just were playing all day. All this stuff that I had never ever seen in my life, and none of it was in English, and these people all knew like it was the back of their hand. There were about 30 of those machines. So the entire room full of video games and then a 6-sided ring for wrestling. 10-year-old me was losing its mind.
That's crazy. And I've been to an anime con in a long time, and I'm eventually going to get back when I'm in better shape and I'm fixing my life. So that's the next 6 to 8 months with fixing my business. So those two things, and streamlining it. And we're in step 1 of monetization, guys, which is its own entity. It took me 8 years to get there. 8 years, and it's getting exciting. So obviously that's something that's cool, and I love Comic Cons and anime cons. But again, I'm still licking my wounds. It was a rough one on my last outing.
The one thing that I will say that I think was really, maybe not the most impressive thing, one of the coolest things for me was just, again, the amount of people there that were just out and proud, similar to to Butch versus Gore, where it was a celebration of LGBTQ culture within wrestling, whereas this was a lot of it was a celebration of the LGBTQ culture within comics and anime and the nerd culture. Just lots and lots of that. And it was a really welcoming environment, which to me you can't ask for anything better.
Yeah, anime cons tend to be a lot more welcoming than Comic Cons in my experience, because I find the anime community is not as aggressive, where in the comic community there's a lot of division, and also there's people like me who are comic book investors, and then also I find that Comic Cons, and I don't know how you feel about this, is way more pay to play than an anime con is. And that's just my opinion, where I feel at a Comic-Con you need like $1,000 to $1,500 to have a really good time. And
I mean, that's probably true.
and at this anime con, you don't need $300 to have a good time. If you have $100 in your pocket, there's something to do where it's relatively cheap because you go to a bunch of panels, you can play video games all day, you can go see a wrestling thing, and it's very less expensive. And also, people are just hanging out and talking about anime a lot of the time at this stuff, and it's very not pay to play, I feel.
Yeah, I think that's at least as you're explaining this one, it was definitely felt more like a fun celebration than it did, a pay-to-play situation.
And then I'm going to make a hard change here because we dealt with the question I was going to ask you at the end. It's sort of, but I'm probably going to bring it up again. It's what is it like to be involved with T2T2 now? Because obviously you're a head trainer there, and obviously you're teaching the next crop of kids. And again, I think everybody who has been not living under a rock knows that there's been a bunch of bad actors in wrestling in the last 2 years, and a bunch of them have gotten out of wrestling. Some of them are somewhat still in it, but they're very much exposed. And what is it like to be teaching people, A, how to wrestle, how to behave in wrestling, teaching them how to actually be, better, and also a different culture to some degree, and, providing, and also, as you stated, T2T2 also gives people who might not have gotten an opportunity. And so what is that like as well? Because it is a very different school, and it's a different mentality, and it's a new breed, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, no, I think the biggest thing for us has always been about creating a culture in which what is expected of you, and how it's expected for you to act, and we don't have to sit there and say any of these things. I think it is, I think it's a little simpler than what I'm saying here, where leaders lead. You model good behavior. You model positive behavior of, a lot of things that were not around or were not thought of when I was breaking in. Something as simple as just not insulting students. They're paying to be there. Why am I going to insult them and make them feel bad? If they don't belong in a ring, just tell them, hey, there's nothing I can do for you. You might want to try elsewhere. You don't have to be a carny about everything. Being real, respecting pronouns is something that, through a couple of students that I've had, where they're like, yeah, you're literally the only trainer I've had who has ever asked me what my pronouns were. It's something as simple as that, where people feel respected and cared for in a situation where they're getting dumped on their head. You can't really beat that, in my opinion. So you go through that, and it's like, well, why would these people ever want to leave this setting? And they don't. They show up to training every week, and they work hard, and it's why you see our kids out there, working shows and, gaining experience, when they've got less than a year's worth of training under their belt, and they're starting to, get some notice. That's why that happens, because of, and also the attitude that they bring from the school. Like I said earlier, they bring elsewhere, which makes people want to be part of things. It makes people understand and respect what our image and our motto is. So that, to me, is incredibly important.
Yeah, and I think it's just obvious things, and then also just guidance, because a bunch of stuff sometimes just pops up and nobody knows what the hell to do with it, because there are crazy circumstances that happen in wrestling. I mean, COVID is a great example of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, again, as a school that started out, in the midst of COVID, we could definitely speak to that.
And so even just guidance, and even just also your students, because I'm sure that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure there's been things that have popped up that a student, doesn't know how to deal with something, and they're like, hey, Logan, how do I deal with this? And that, sometimes things come up like that, right?
No, absolutely. I think, again, just even just using the example of COVID, our COVID protocol was never something that we said, here's what you need to do, here's how this works. Because everybody is put in a position where they understand the importance of protecting each other and themselves, we've never had to explain COVID protocol to anybody at the school. When somebody has been exposed to it, literally as soon as they find out, they let me or Tom or Greatness know, and they'll, hey, everyone, please go get a test. Unfortunately, I was exposed. And then, to quarantine. We've never said any of this. And because of that, we've never, ever had a COVID outbreak at our school. We've had people, exposed to it, but not once has anybody else within the school caught it. And I think that, again, speaks volumes to how seriously we take things. And again, how important the culture there is to building outward.
Yeah, and I think it's just basic common sense, and also not shaming somebody if they said, "Oh my God, I was exposed to it."
You'd be surprised how little common sense actually exists in professional wrestling.
Well, I'm not a wrestler, so I'm on the opposite side. I'm looking at it, and I don't know what I'm classified as because I'm technically a fan, but I have a little more insight because obviously when you're doing all these interviews, you get a little more insight into how businesses work and how things work, and promoters tell you things and wrestlers tell you things.
Sure,
and
that makes sense.
So I'm in a weird position because, again, I've never trained as a wrestler. It would be physically unsafe for me to do it, and it would be a very bad thing. That would be a bad promoter right there. If I showed up to a wrestling school and they allowed me in the ring, it'd be a problem.
Yeah, but you'd be surprised the amount of spots that'll just take your money and kind of, play around like that.
Fair enough. So, and then obviously you're turning out a bunch of students, and it's getting very, very cool. And it's a very cool spot to be able to do and build the next generation. There are very few people in wrestling who are doing that right now. Matt Tremont is doing that very, very well.
Tremont is brilliant with this. His kids are incredible.
And so it's a very cool thing when you get to train people and build the next crop of students, and it's very rewarding, I would imagine, when you see them out there and just helping them along their journey, and also teaching them a few things as well, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
And then also I want to talk about Pro Wrestling Grind because that's going to be fun.
Yeah. Oh man, that's pretty dope, man. They just announced my match last night. I'm really stoked about it, myself and Merc. That's gonna be it's gonna be something else, man. I'm really stoked for it. I know Rip had and this is going back to Limitless. Last time I saw Rip, we were at a Limitless show, and he had definitely had a couple of shots of something, or by that point, but had gone off about just how, like, man, I want to do something where we just, it's about the wrestling, man, and it's about, like, that good old school hard hitting wrestling, and everyone's just there to just outdo the next person because they love it, and everyone, just all the good stuff that I love to hear. And I'm just like, you know what? Hell yeah, dude. I love that idea. I think you should go for it. And, I think it was probably in the works by that point, but that's Pro Wrestling Grind. All the stuff that he talks about, it's right there.
And also, Pro Wrestling Grind, for those who don't know, obviously you should go watch that interview with me, Delmy, and Rip. And I have to get Rip with ZPB on. That's going to be a fun one for those who are super interested in no wrestling history. But it's also a very selective roster, meaning that everybody has sort of earned their way in and was hand-selected. And it's not that, we're going to just throw a random match into this. There is none of that in this promotion. And so what is that like to be in a very selective spot with, I think there's 12 matches, I want to say. Or no, there's not. There's 7 matches or 8 matches, right?
I don't think 12 matches would necessarily be good for anyone.
But it's very much a very selective. I think there's like there's anywhere from 14 to 16 wrestlers involved on the card. It's very, very narrow, which is a very, very small card in a lot of ways. And so what is that like for you to be in a very selective spot? Because this is probably one of the most selective rosters right now in wrestling.
Yeah, I'll tell you this much. And I don't value myself as being somebody who's egotistical by any means, because I definitely know that I'm humble, but I belong there. And it's important for me to put that out there and, let people know. I know that I belong out there among the best. So to be put on there, certainly, I appreciate it a whole bunch, but, this is a position that I should be in. I should be in there with the best. I should be going up against the best, and I should be getting the best output out of everything. So, again, while it feels great to be part of this roster, and because I know how selective it is, I know that I belong, and that's important to note too.
it's so important to know what your worth is, and I am learning that right now. And it is beyond interesting when you start learning it and how you conduct yourself. And it is a fascinating experience. And this is I'm starting that journey. And so I don't know the full position of knowing you belong in certain areas and all that stuff, but probably in the next 12 months, I'm going to learn that real quick. So I'm very excited, and I know exactly what that must feel like, and I'll let you know in 12 months how I feel.
Absolutely, you definitely need to.
I'm sure you're going to be on in 12 months if you don't already hate me by now, but that's not the point. It's okay. It's okay. You can be Batman. I'll be Joker. It'll work out.
Keep me away from any Joker-related nonsense. Overdone.
I would ask you about Harley and Ivy, but because the Eat, Bang, Kill tour looks phenomenal.
Yeah, I've been following the Harley and Ivy stuff going on in the current Batman run, and it's great. It's good to see them bringing that back. It's exciting.
I'm very excited for that, where it's a continuation of the Harley Quinn, or it's spun out of the animation series, and that is going to be a phenomenal comic. And Ivan Tao, who did a cover for it and did the almost the Harley and Ivy kissing cover for Comic Mint, is coming on in October. And we're going to talk about a lot of his cover work. And so it's going to be very, very exciting. And then
that's awesome.
The other person I'm trying to get is Shannon Meir, who does an amazing Harley Quinn and almost realistic. And you're a Marvel guy, so you'd appreciate if you look up Shannon Meir, and all of his photorealistic art. X-Men covers are awesome too. I'm trying to get him on because that's going to be amazing. But that's a whole different thing. I am not going to pull a Killian McMurphy with you at the moment, where I brought Killian and Ian Flynn together on a podcast for Sonic the Hedgehog's 30th anniversary. To talk about people who have connections, right?
Right, absolutely.
The way I say it, and this is absolutely on PC, and it's going to come out. I already know how it's going to sound, but the Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Certainly.
That was like that for Killian.
Oh, that's wild. Yeah, I mean, again, you put yourself in a position to kind of, be part of these things, and who knows what the hell happens. Sometimes it turns out.
I made Killian's wish come true.
That's wonderful.
But anyway, obviously we've been speaking for a while now, and I know you got a bit of a hard deadline, but I do want to give you an opportunity to promote yourself. I didn't get to 90% of what I wanted to talk about, which is phenomenal.
This means that we could do this again. I'm always down to chat you up on anything.
And so obviously I want to give you an opportunity to promote yourself. Where can people, find you on Twitter? Where can people bother you on your Facebook page, your Instagram? Where can people buy your merchandise? Because that's important at this point. Obviously, I want everybody to go buy you a shirt when they see this.
Yes,
and
please buy shirts. So here's for me. I'm the same on all social media: Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at King of Chaos NYC. You could check out my podcast on all social media at Year One Pod. That's the number 1. And if you're looking to buy some King of Chaos merch, go ahead. You got 2 ways to do that. The first being my Pro Wrestling Tees store, prowrestlingtees.com/King of Chaos NYC. Literally, that's the next one. This one is all exclusive shirts. You won't find these ever at my merch table. But if you can't find me at a merch table, you can go to my online merch table at kingofchaosnyc.bigcartel.com. All the stuff that you get on my merch table is all right there. I always appreciate you having me on. I appreciate you giving me a platform to continue to try and spread some positivity and love to the best of my ability.
Yeah, and on that note, what I'm going to say is that obviously you have to support indie wrestling, and there's a bunch of ways to do it. Obviously, you should go buy their T-shirts, 8x10s, other things they're selling, because that matters, and that's huge. Whether you're doing it online or at shows, because it does subsidize, it does help with a lot of things, and it's just something that you should do. Also, going to wrestling shows and actually seeing your wrestlers wrestle is also important, not just for your favorite wrestlers, but for everybody on the card, as well as if there's food at a wrestling event, you should obviously buy food if you're hungry there, or anything that you so desire that you would like to buy and eat or drink for that matter. Also, though, if you're like me and you're right now staying home and wrestling is live, you should be tweeting at wrestlers. It's very important to tweet and engage with wrestlers when they're wrestling, or just in general, or liking or resharing something. Or if you see a really cool shirt that you dropped, obviously tweet about it or say, oh, that's an awesome shirt. Goes a long way. I am also an indie content creator, guys. And while I do have a sponsor, this is not cheap to run. I do have Buy Me a Coffee. What that is it's similar to Patreon. You can basically buy me a coffee for $5 or buy me 10 coffees, or better yet, just give me your credit card and I'll take what I need. But the idea is that you have to support all indie content. But if you have to pick between buying me a coffee and Logan a shirt, or buying a shirt that has Logan on it, you should obviously buy that shirt first and foremost. And then you should follow me on Twitter, or just like this entire interview would be perfectly fine with me because it makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. And so please go do that. Or if you would like to print comics, just drop my name, Andrew Davis, into Mix'em, and you get yourself 5% off, and 5% matters. Every penny matters. I know, because I'm counting every single penny every single day of my life right now, because I like my Frappuccino, and sometimes I don't have enough money to have a Frappuccino, and it's very upsetting for the week. So having said all that, I'm going to give you the final word.
I'm going to use the same final word that I use on my podcast every episode. Be awesome to each other and spread love.
That's good. That's good. I'm not going to steal. So that's a wrap right there.